Roadman, welcome back to the podcast. The amazing Yuri Carlson. She is a nutritionist for some of the very biggest names in cycling. And today I get a chance to pick her brain and we talk all about fueling strategies, when to cut back and exercise a little bit of restraint around food, what macros we need to fuel our everyday training. But first, I dig into a topic that is really, really important to me. It's the decisions we're making that we don't know that are sometimes holding us back. So we start off this conversation talking about one food that a lot of us are eating that's stopping and stalling our progress. Let's jump into this. It's Yuri Carlson. Yuri, welcome back to the Roadman podcast.
Thanks for having me again.
Our last conversation blew minds. I love that expression that it's not what we know for sure that hurts us. It's not what we don't know that hurts us. It's what we know for sure that just isn't so. And that was really summarized nicely, our last conversation, because so many of us were making so many mistakes and you just shone a light on all them and exposed my vast inadequacies when it came to diet.
It's always good to have those conversations.
I want to start off today, and maybe there's not an answer to this, but a nagging question I had in the back of my head: is there one food that's slowing us down as endurance athletes?
As endurance athletes, I would say I get a lot of people that come to me and they think that they need to be focusing on protein. You know, and I think that comes from kind of the bodybuilding world did a really good job of just kind of turning protein into this star macronutrient, right? And everyone was focused on protein, but they didn't recognize that is very different for strength focused athletes, the gym people, versus endurance athletes. So I get people that I talk to that are even like, oh man, I should be eating protein on my rides, right? Or I should be focusing on protein for recovery. Protein for recovery is typically what people think of, right? Recovery equals protein. But for endurance athletes, if you are eating mostly protein after your efforts, especially, that's the food that's slowing you down. Because when you look at it, actually what you need to be focused on is mostly carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. The ratio is 4 parts carbohydrate and 1 part protein. So perfect example is like the Scratch Lines recovery mix. You've had Alan on the podcast, right?
Correctly.
Yeah. Their recovery mix is 40 grams of carbohydrate, 10 grams of protein. That's exactly what you're looking for after endurance exercise. If you're focusing on protein, you're not giving your body the carbohydrate that it needs to rebuild those glycogen stores and to adapt from the workout that you just did as an endurance athlete.
So is protein slowing us down because it's displacing carbohydrates? So we're coming in from a ride and we're just having protein instead of carbohydrates? Or is there something actually like in the protein that's inhibiting the absorption of carbohydrates?
It's slowing you down because it could be displacing the carbohydrates, right? If you're focusing too much on protein and you're not getting enough carbohydrate, then you're missing the carbohydrate that you need to recover. But also what I'll say is it literally does slow down how your body digests carbohydrate. So it's a really nice thing to use if, say, you're just hanging out throughout the day and you're eating a lunch or a snack or something like that. And instead of eating only carbohydrates and having a blood sugar spike and then a blood sugar crash, if you combine the carbohydrate with protein, it'll actually make it go like this more steadily. So it can make carbohydrates burn more slowly. So this is what we get into when we're talking with like people that are bike packing or during ultra events, because they're actually skipping multiple meals and they do need to be consuming small amounts of protein when they're on the bike to make those carbohydrates last longer and also to provide hunger prevention, which is what protein does. So it kind of depends on the context, but yeah, it can slow things down in multiple ways.
Interesting. So if that's the wrong way to do it, you mentioned the formula for Scratch Labs is 4-to-1, so 40 grams of carbohydrates for 10 grams. But surely that's not like a fixed amount I should be taking. Like if this evening I'm a little bit time crunched, I'm only going to get maybe 60 minutes on the indoor bike this evening versus tomorrow morning, I'm going to get a 5-hour endurance ride. I don't want to be having the same recovery drink coming in from both of those, assumingly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's just one pure example, right? Like typically what you're looking for is any effort that's like 1 to 2 hours 3 hours long, you're looking at about 2 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. When you get up into the 4+ hour efforts, you're looking at double that, 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram body weight. And for a lot of people, that sounds like a lot. And what I say with that is it doesn't have to be what you eat for the first opportunity right after you finish that effort. It can be, okay, I'm going to have this with my recovery shake, whether it's, the scratch recovery, whether it's some sort of chocolate milk, whether it's a smoothie with a banana and some other kind of, milk or almond milk or oat milk in it, and whatever else you want in there. And then, okay, for your next few eating opportunities, you're also focusing on those carbohydrates along with other components of a balanced meal, like some protein, some fats, some plants, and that kind of thing. So don't think that you need to be sitting there getting all of this carbohydrate in one sitting.
Does this glycogen reuptake window, has that been debunked, or is that still? I remember when I was starting cycling, it was almost like coaches would tell you to set a stopwatch as soon as you get off the bike. You need to be taking your recovery drink within 15 minutes because we're most sensitive to reabsorbing carbohydrates during that period. Does it matter when we take the carbohydrates? Can I, come home, upload my ride to Strava, get a shower, clean my bike, and then prepare myself, a linguine that takes 35, 40 minutes to prepare? Am I damaging my recovery by doing that?
Yeah, so there is this thing called exercise-induced glucose uptake, which means that when you exercise, your sensitivity to insulin, for insulin to act on your muscles and kind of ignore your fat cells, that is increased, right? So insulin will act on your muscle cells more specifically. And as you get away from your exercise, you finish that workout, and then time goes on, that sensitivity decreases. So there definitely is an opportunity there to utilize that sensitivity and get in some source of carbohydrates. Like the recovery shake, what I typically recommend is finish your effort, have something that's high in carbohydrate, whatever is available, whatever sounds good to you, have the shake, have something, whatever, like any kind of high carbohydrate food that's available to you in your kitchen. And then go and do the shower, change, that kind of thing, and then go on to your next meal within an hour or two after that also contains, the ingredient, the carbohydrate, that kind of thing.
Does the division matter? So say if I work out the maths on this, I do a long ride, a 5-hour ride tomorrow, so I'm in that 4 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. So say the maths, I'm so bad at maths, but say it works out as I need to take in 140 grams of carbohydrates tomorrow. Does the post-ride, does the division matter if I take 70 grams from my recovery drink and 70 grams from my solid meal versus 40 grams from my recovery drink? Or what's the optimum breakdown of instant carbs to slightly delayed carbs, we'll call them?
Yeah, it's really kind of just like what's realistic for you, honestly. This is the kind of stuff where people can get so caught up in, like what's the optimal, like 0.1% thing that I can do that's going to be a little bit different. But what I say is like, do what's realistic for you to fit it into your day and make it so that you're not driving yourself crazy trying to do all these calculations and, I have to get in, 60% now and 40% later. Do what's easy. Do what you're going to be able to do consistently.
I think that's a great point. Because I hear you on the Scratch Labs. I've never tasted their recovery drink, but I use some of their on-bike products, and no brand affiliation. I use Morton and a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're out for a 4 or 5 hour ride, you come home, you've been taking all this like it's not food, it's stuff they send with, Elon sending with the astronauts up to space. Like this, it's a food substitute. And when you come home, almost like the last thing you want is another commercial recovery drink. It's like you want something that feels a bit more nourishing. And for me, chocolate milk kind of feels like a halfway house between a commercial recovery drink and a solid food. And I kind of default to that a lot of the time. And like you said, it's because it's something I can repeatedly do because I live very close to the store that sells chocolate milk.
Yeah, that's
fair. Am I leaving gains on the table by that, or you think stick with the chocolate milk?
That's great. If it's easy for you to get, if you get it in, if you enjoy it, then you can move on to the next thing. But that's pretty much mostly carbohydrate, a little bit of protein. If you want to take it to the next level and make something, I make a smoothie. It's just a really easy recovery smoothie. It's 1 banana, 2 tablespoons of any kind of nut butter. That's going to give you your protein. And then any type of milk. It can be a dairy milk. It can be an unsweetened almond milk or something like that. And then if you like chocolate, you can add a tablespoon or so of cocoa powder. That, I've done the calculations for that. That is about that 40 grams of carbohydrate and 10 grams of protein. So it's that 4-to-1 ratio. You know, like you said, right? If it's going to be a 4-hour effort, you might be doing double that. If it's a 2-hour effort, you might be doing that regular recipe.
We are so excited to announce that we are partnering with Whoop. Whoop are changing the game when it comes to wearable technology and health monitoring. Whoop is a wearable health and fitness coach that provides you with feedback and actionable insights into your sleep, your recovery, your training, your stress, and your overall health. Sarah and I have been using Whoop for years, and we love the insights it provides into our body's inner workings. It really gives us a look under the hood. And you're going to see Mathieu van der Poel, Richard Carapaz, and other elite level cyclists wearing Whoop. But it isn't just for those superstars. All the data is personalized to your unique physiology and fitness levels. If you're interested in taking control of your health and your fitness so that you can excel in all aspects of your life, you have to go and check out Whoop. Go to the URL now, which is join.whoop.com/Roadman. I'm going to pop that in the description below, and you're going to get a free month's access to Whoop membership on me. I promise you won't regret it.
So I want to, and this might seem like a little bit of a jump for anyone just tuning into this, the first podcast was kind of building on a theme we talked about in the last podcast, where we'd kind of talked about the evolution of carbohydrates during exercise, where when I was starting out it was maybe 20 to 30 grams, and now athletes are pushing the upper limits of 120 to 140. So building on that, like as someone who's been back training for about 4 weeks now, and it's the first time that I've consistently tried to take in this many carbs per hour, I feel better off the bike. I feel better on the bike. But my concern is, like, what's this doing to my stomach? Like, where's the line between performance and longevity? Is there a trade-off here where I'm going a little bit better on the bike, but what am I doing to my gut microbiome? Like, there was an old wives' tale here: if you swam in the sea and the sea was water or dirty water, to like have a can of Coke after it, the can of Coke would kill the good and bad bacteria in your stomach. Like, I'm almost having a can of Coke every session now, and I'm having like a bag of Haribo every session. That's like, I'm going to lose my teeth, but I'm worried like what's going on internally, and where's that trade-off between performance and longevity?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'll say with that, I think there's a big difference between giving your body what it needs when it needs it and when it's going to utilize it and burn it, as opposed to giving your body that when you're sitting on the couch all day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I do believe that quality matters, right? I believe that, you know, like sometimes the Coke or the candy with the artificial colors and that kind of stuff in it, like sometimes that's what you can get because you're running into a convenience store and you're grabbing that. But also there's a very big difference between, you know, for example, like a cookie that you make at home with ingredients that you know that your grandmother could have had in her kitchen, as opposed to a cookie that's been sitting on the shelf at the convenience store and could sit there for another 6 months because it's full of preservatives and a bunch of artificial flavors and things like that in it. So
bacteria won't eat these cookies.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So we can be picky about that kind of stuff when we have the capacity to be picky. I think there's a balance to be found there, right? You don't want to drive yourself crazy and say, oh, I'm never going to eat any of those foods that have this ingredient, you know, the artificial colors, the artificial flavors, the preservatives, that kind of thing, because sometimes that can be just, it's better than nothing, especially as an athlete. You don't want to be underfueled. You don't want to be in a massive calorie deficit and having the negative stress of that when you are riding at the intensity and the volume that you're riding at, right? But when you can be picky about it and pick the foods that are. I think the challenge is with it,
Yuri. Like, if you look at the back of some of these wrappers, like, you know, not picking on just Morton, but you look at the back of the wrapper, like, I don't know what them ingredients are. Like, the words have 48 letters in them, and it's like, and then the gel comes out and it looks something closer to something I put inside my tire for tubular sealant than it looks something that will go on my dinner plate. And it's like, I get that it's good for performance because I can feel that. But how do I judge like, how do I judge like the percentage of these that should be making up part of my training, right? Because at the moment I'm having virtually no homemade stuff. Should I be shifting to at least 50% homemade stuff, or only defaulting to the sport specific stuff on race day or key sessions? Or do you have a rule of thumb to kind of navigate that?
I don't necessarily have a rule of thumb because it really depends on what works for each person. You know, like the ability to consume the more real food options becomes a skill and something that needs to be practiced. I wouldn't say that you should only use, you know, like the sports nutrition products when you're racing and the other stuff when you're not racing, because then you could run into some issues when suddenly you're racing and you haven't been using that during training. But it's there's no ratio, right? Because it depends on so many scenarios. It depends on what's available to you. It depends on what your body tolerates, what your gut tolerates, what you're able to eat. Again, it goes back to, all right, what can I actually get in that's going to be enough calories, enough grams of carbohydrate throughout every single hour? And typically for the people that we work with, the one thing that we want to get away from is saying, oh, I only need to rely on these prepackaged sports nutrition products that are marketed to the masses, where you could go into the grocery store and you could buy some gummies from the bulk section that might be the exact same thing that's in that packet of sports nutrition product. It's going to have the same amount of carbohydrates. It's going to have the same amount of everything else in it, but it might have a more simple ingredient list. Because, you know, for here in the States, you know, we can go into Whole Foods or we can go into a more natural grocery store and we can find the natural sweetened, or not necessarily natural sweetened, but like the cane sugar versus the high fructose corn syrup gummies, right? And they don't have artificial colors in them. They have color from beet and turmeric and that kind of thing. Those are going to give you the same amount of energy, but they're not going to have a bunch of extra stuff in them, which is a nice option to have.
Because if it comes out at the moment that Haribo is carcinogenic, I'm in a pretty bad spot.
A lot of people are.
Those fried eggs. You're telling me they're not fried eggs. They're not like dehydrated fried eggs is what you're telling me. So any recipes you're using that I could, bearing in mind time crunch, balancing a million priorities, very poor culinary skills, any nice homemade recipes that I could start bringing out on the bike to supplement or replace some of those gels?
Yeah. I love a good banana bread. A loaf of banana bread, especially because you can batch cook it and then you can freeze it individually and put it in your freezer and then pull it out kind of like the same as a bar. I love it because it's a great, easy source of carbohydrate and the moisture content is super high. The moisture content being high and this kind of stuff makes it really easy to eat, right? Like you can bite a couple bites of banana bread and it goes down pretty easily. You don't need to swig a whole half a water bottle to get it down because it's a dry prepackaged bar. So banana bread is a staple. Making like Blondie cookie bars is another staple, or just going to my local bakery and seeing what I can grab. But typically those sweet breads are pretty awesome options.
And where do you get your ChatGPT in these recipes? YouTube, or have you got favorite cookbooks?
I would just, let's see. We can add one to the show notes. I'll find you one that I like. It's Half Baked Harvest. She's a gal that's based here in Colorado, and she has a super simple banana bread recipe. But typically, when you're looking at a recipe like that, you know, just find one that's just simple ingredients, right? Like a banana bread is going to be the mashed bananas, the flour, the sugar, real sugar, eggs, and some sort of leavening agents, and that's pretty much it. The scratch slabs.
Alan Murchison's cookbook. Have you seen that one?
Yes. Yeah, those
some good stuff in there. The pancakes are sweet.
Pancakes are great. Ride fuel. Bring some pancakes.
Kind of come apart in your pocket though, like, and they're stuck in the headphone jack in your phone and stuff. And it just causes a lot of problems.
Yeah. So that's the stuff to practice, right? Like, there's the convenience of these packaged sports nutrition foods that have been made easy to consume. They've got all, you know, the right wrappers, the right containers, and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, when you're consuming more of these real food options, you're probably going to have a learning curve. It's going to probably be a little bit more messy than usual. But then my question becomes, like, if you're going to eat that more frequently, then you're going to eat yet another gel or yet another sports nutrition product because you can't even stomach it, then it's probably going to be worth a little bit extra effort or a little bit extra mess to get in the calories that you need with something that you're actually excited about eating and that you can feel good about eating.
Roadman, whether you're a weekend warrior or a world tour rider, the right tools can make all the difference. Enter 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter, the latest innovation from 4i, designed to help you reach peak performance. The Precision 3 Plus Power Meter is a compact yet powerful unit. It weighs just 9 grams and it's packed with features that set it apart, including integration with Apple's Find My network, giving you the peace of mind by letting you track your power meter wherever it is. Plus, you've got up to 800 hours of battery life. We all know that accuracy is key, and 4i's delivers a groundbreaking plus or minus 1% accuracy thanks to their unique 3D strain gauge technology. For those seeking even more data, the Precision 3 Plus Pro Power Meter offers dual-sided power meter metrics, giving you detailed insights into pedaling efficiency, torque effectiveness, and left-right balance. 4i's offers versatile product options to suit your needs. Choose from ride-ready power meters with pre-installed units on Shimano cranks, or up for factory-installed power meter where you send in your crankset for a custom installation. Ready to elevate your cycling game? Trust 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter. Precision, performance, and peace of mind all in one. Learn more by visiting 4iiii.com. That's 4iiii.com. I'm going to put that in the description down below.
So we were talking a little bit off air about I'm back training for the past month or so, and I've been lucky enough to have access to some nutritionists who are working with some of the best athletes in the world. But what I've been shocked about is how much I have to eat in a period where I'm trying to lose weight. Like for a 4-hour ride day, a 4-hour base ride, like, you know, well below LT1, I'm having almost 5,000 calories in a day and losing weight. World Tour riders seem to be going this way as well now, where World Tour riders are all eating 4,500 plus calories on a 4-hour endurance day. Can you explain to me, like, what's the rationale behind this World Tour eating phenomenon, we'll call it, for want of a better expression?
Yeah, I love to see this. You know, as all of us know, looking back at the previous ethos around fueling enough, it was like eating is cheating, right? That was a thing for a long time. And now we're getting away from that, which is incredible. And we're seeing how that's impacting people mentally and physically, which is also incredible. The mental aspect of this, and people not having to not eat because they feel like they're cheating or because no one else around them is doing it, is a really incredible thing. But what's happening here is people are giving their body what it needs when it needs it. When you do that, your body can operate at a place where it's going to start burning those calories as fuel and as energy and just for recovery. When you are trying to fuel, or when you're trying to train at such a high volume and such a high intensity, like these high level athletes, and like what you're doing, Anthony, training, you know, over 20 hours a week, and you're not getting enough calories, our body shuts down these essential systems, right? Like it just kind of operates on like the bare minimum. And that is when it can say like, okay, I'm not getting what I need when I need it. So when I do get enough, I'm going to hold on to it. And that's why a lot of people see weight gain when they're like, why am I training so much? Training more, I'm eating less, and I'm gaining weight. It's because our body is smarter than that. If weight loss was just about exercising more and eating less, everyone that went into their doctor and was told, oh, are you exercising enough? And are you just eating less? They would lose weight, but that's not how it works. Then we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic, right? So it's more complicated than that because our body is smarter than that. So by giving your body what it needs when it needs it, you are becoming a more efficient machine, and you're able to burn those calories instead of being more predisposed to store them.
Would I be right to say it's about the distribution of those calories across the day? Like I could eat 4,800 calories in a day and gain weight, even though I'm now currently eating 4,800 calories a day and losing weight if I distributed those calories poorly. So then maybe my question is to build on your one. You're saying it's about giving your body what you need when you need it. How do I determine when I need the calories?
So as an endurance athlete, a lot of this comes down to giving your body the carbohydrates it needs when it needs the carbohydrates, which is going to be mostly, I say sandwiching your carbohydrate intake, most of your carbohydrate intake around your workouts, right? Because that's when your body is going to use it. You can use the carbohydrates pre-workout to set you up for the workout. During the workout is where a lot of that additional variability comes in terms of, am I eating, 4,000 calories versus 3,000 calories? And then after the workout to recover, especially for the, like we were just talking about, the recovery shake or that kind of thing, or the high carb recovery within the first 60 minutes. And then for your dinner or something like that. That is really important to give your body what it needs when it needs those carbohydrates. And then outside of that, you're focusing on more of that balance of, do I have a source of protein? Do I have a source of plants? Do I have a healthy fat? And also, do I have some carbohydrates? But switching from simple carbohydrates primarily to also complex carbohydrates. So it does come down to the timing, and then it comes down to the variability of the days. Also, if you've got a short interval session versus a 4 to 6 hour effort, your carbohydrate consumption and your overall calorie consumption is going to be very different. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize too, is that we're getting away from this idea that like calorie intake needs to be the same every single day. It can be quite variable based on what you have on your calendar or what you have going on in your life.
And so you gave us that very useful rule of thumb for, if I'm riding for over 4 hours, 4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight after the session. Is there a similar sort of rule you would adopt before a session? Like if I'm looking to know how to fuel for that 4 hour ride, is that too much fuel to take in pre-ride?
Yeah. So you're looking at kind of what kind of timing you have also, if you're eating like a meal and then you're going a couple hours and then about to get on the bike, you can have a pre-workout snack that has mostly carbohydrate in it. Or you're looking at, like, most of the people are waking up really early in the morning, they're going out and doing a ride and then they're coming back. If that's the case in that example, then you're going to be having, let's see, what's the total? I'm trying to think of the number of the grams of carbohydrate that you'd be thinking about. I want to say it's like 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrate that you'd be thinking about consuming pre-workout before you get on the bike. And whether that's a snack, like a simple snack, or a breakfast that is balanced, that depends on the timing. You're not going to have a basic balanced breakfast, eggs and toast and fruit, or oatmeal and some sort of protein and a balanced breakfast that has all the macros in it 30 minutes before you go out and do a workout, because that's going to sit in your gut and you're not going to feel awesome. You'd be focusing primarily on just carbohydrate if you're eating less than an hour before you get on the bike. And then you'd come back and you'd have your balanced meal.
Did you see Remco's latest vlog?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a lot of people are talking about it. He's going on a 7-hour training ride. Now, I get that that's longer than most people are going to do for their weekend ride, but his breakfast actually looks like something from a competitive eater. Like has this huge bowl of oatmeal with Nutella, then he's having 2 bagels with cream cheese, he's having another bowl of cereal, a couple of glasses of orange juice, yogurt with like Nutella or maple syrup or something dribbled on it, then fruit, and it's like, it's an insane volume of food, and you're looking at him going, he can't be even double digits body fat, and he's eating this much food.
Yeah. So then my question becomes, what does the timing look like for that? And how is he doing that in terms of how he spreads that out in the hours leading up to the effort?
Yeah, it looked like, again, hard to tell with, fancy editing, but it looked like he got up and that was breakfast, and he's kind of heading out maybe an hour later, he's getting kitted. But you would just assume, based off that it's a 7-hour ride, that he's not heading out at lunchtime, because it's just going to be dark when he gets home. So I guess he's getting out for 9, 10 a.m.
This is something that also very much depends on the person and what they've been doing and kind of their habits, right? Like, so many people start with us and they're not eating before their morning effort, or they're just like, you know what? I never really eaten breakfast. I never really felt hungry. And that's not, it's just how they've set themselves up. It's how their body has evolved and just the habit that they've kind of just fallen into. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't need it, but when you don't honor your hunger cues for an extended period of time, your hunger cues kind of give up and they don't send those signals even though you need it. So this is where this person has probably trained their body over a very long period of time to get to the point where they can consume that. And when they wake up, their body is actually like, okay, I'm hungry. I'm going to send out those hunger cues. and I know that those hunger cues are going to be met, and then those hunger cues respond accordingly.
It's funny you said hunger cues, because Sarah worked one-on-one with you for a while, and that terminology, I've just heard it so often in the house for the past 6 months. I need to honor my hunger cues. But exactly that. She would not have eaten breakfast for as long as I've known her. We've been going out 6 years now, and she rarely ate breakfast. And now she wakes up hungry. And so she's like, I need to honor my hunger. And we'd be like out walking the dogs. She's panicking to get home. I need to honor my hunger. I'm like, who is this hunger person of your master?
Yeah. It's a skill, and we lose it. A lot of people lose it. You know, kids are really good at it. If you've been around kids, you know that they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full and they don't want anything. And we just lose the ability to do that as we get into adulthood. And it's a really important thing, especially as athletes, to be able to honor and recognize.
Roadman, I know how serious you take your goal setting, whether they're fitness or life-related goals. If you're looking for a powerful ally to support you on this journey, look no further than Huel. Huel has become my secret weapon for when I don't have time to prepare a balanced meal. It ensures I get the nutrition I need without sacrificing time or taste. Plus, it stops me from reaching for that takeaway menu. I always throw a bottle into my backpack when I'm heading into the city to work, and it stops me eating junk convenience foods, snacking on croissants and bars of chocolate, because I know they don't support my training goals. It's a handy, nutritious meal on the go, and it's got over 22 grams of protein. Huel is perfect for athletes that don't have time to cook or prepare food before a training session. It's convenient, nutritious fuel at your fingertips, ensuring you hit your daily fueling needs for that session. Huel Ready to Drink has 26 essential vitamins and minerals in every single bottle. You're getting a whopping 175 health benefits. Plus, it's made from natural ingredients like tapioca, sunflower seed, coconut, and more. The best part? It's the flavors. There's 8 crazy, beautiful flavors. Iced coffee is what's in my backpack right at the moment. You can get Huel directly to your home. All you got to do is head on over to the Huel website, huel.com/Roadman.
So talk about IntraRide Feeling. When we get into the ride, so we've had our nice breakfast, we understand what our recovery is. During the ride, at this time of year, a lot of people are doing, base training, zone 1, zone 2 stuff. But is there a guide that someone could take with them throughout the year where they say, hey, the session I'm doing today is X, Y, and Z. From this, I can calculate my consumption of carbohydrates per hour, because I'm guessing it's a sliding scale somewhere from at the low end, 40 or so, to at the up end, maybe 140. How do I work out where to land on that scale based on my session?
So typically you're looking for, first of all, for any effort that's over 60 to 90 minutes, you want to eat during. So use that as, is my effort over 60 to 90 minutes? If so, I need to eat during. One of the big mistakes that people make is if it's a 90-minute effort, they're like, oh, okay, I can just get by with the final 30 minutes. But just getting by typically means that you're going to come home and you're going to be ravenous, or you're going to end up overeating in the latter part of the day when you don't actually need it. So be careful of that, first of all. Then,
or even just the adaptation, is the adaptation different just getting by? That's what I always wondered. Like, just because I can go and ride 4 hours with no food, most probably doesn't make it a good idea. If I rode 4 hours but fueled properly, I got to be able to train at a level which is X percentage higher. And does that mean my adaptation is going to be X percent higher to the session?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's up to us to give our body the fuel that it needs to get stronger and adapt after each session and during each session. If we don't do that, what's the point of the session? It's just kind of staying at our baseline.
Yeah.
So that's huge. So that's a good thing to recognize.
Okay, so sorry to cut you off from there. So you were talking about the fueling guide for our IntraRide.
Yep. Yeah, so then the sliding scale that you mentioned comes from the idea that we want to replace 40 to 50% of the calories that we burn per hour with fuel.
Okay. So help me understand this. So if I'm on my Garmin and I have my kilojoules open, how do I use that as a guide for what I'm eating?
So the thing is with that, like, they can be a great starting point, right? Like, if you have a power meter, that gives you more data than without a power meter. The more data that you can have from your Garmin and give your Garmin, the more accurately it's going to estimate what that calorie burn is, which is important. The way that I look at this is it's not as accurate as we would like it to be, unfortunately. However, if you're going to do the same type of workout multiple times over, say a 2-week period of time, you can look at the average from a similar workout, similar zones, similar duration from 3 workouts, for example. And it might tell you 3 different calorie burns, but take the average of that. And then look at, all right, I'm going to aim for 40% of the calories that come from that average. And that's what I want to consume during my effort. And then you break that down into each hour.
Kilojoules and calories the same thing? Or do I need to do a calculation to convert kilojoules to calories?
What's an example from what your Garmin is telling you? Let's look at this. So for like a standard ride.
Yeah, I'm going to say that kilojoules are my guess would be they're 30% of kilocalories, but I could be slightly off on that.
Yeah, so, they do need to be converted, because when we're looking at like kilocalories and calories, those are used interchangeably. But when we're looking at kilojoules...
Let me pull up my training peaks from yesterday, because I feel good about this, because I actually am doing my training at the moment, so I'll have to be like, hey. So yesterday I rode for 4 hours and 14 minutes, 210 watts average, and it was 2,634 kilojoules.
2,634?
Yeah. Now, I have my fueling from yesterday as well, where I was down to have 75 grams per hour during that session. Now, I don't know how I've arrived at that. That's just given to me.
Yeah, so it says that the kilojoules, 418 kilojoules equals 100 calories.
Okay.
But that is, if you're looking at, when I look at kilojoules and calories, then that only becomes like 629 calories, but that doesn't really make sense either. So let's see. Kilojoules, divided by 4.86.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting when you're working that out. It's just to give context to listeners. So I'm getting these recommendations from the nutritionist at the moment. So they're kind of presented in here's your plan for the day based on the session you have to say. But the goal of this conversation is really because I'm going to be more compliant with those recommendations when I understand the rationale behind them. And I'm not just going, they're telling me to eat 2 bags of Haribo today. That seems crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at your nutrition facts, are you looking at, like your Haribo or something like that? Is it telling you the energy from that in calories?
On the back of my, so all I look at is if I'm taking something that's basically pure sugar, like Haribo or like dates or something, I'm really ignoring the calories on it and just looking at the grams of carbohydrates. So I'm just matching the grams of carbohydrates up from what I'm told to eat to what's on the back of the pack.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so there's a couple things that can come into play here, right? Like we can look at the grams of carbohydrate, we can look at the calories, because when we're looking at the 40 to 50% range, replacing that, it's talking about calories, but then we want to also figure out what does that look like in terms of total carbohydrates and the grams of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
There's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. So that's when in my head, how I'm doing things, North American style, right, is like that conversion works, because we're talking about 4 grams of carbohydrate per 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate.
This is where I find ChatGPT super helpful, because I'll look at my dinner for the evening and it'll say, okay, you need to take 120 grams of carbohydrates, 40 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat, or whatever it is, but you can't go over 700 total calories. And I'm like, how the hell do I calculate this? And I just throw it all into ChatGPT. I'm like, it's like, how much rice, chicken, and avocado can I have based off this prescription? And it'll tell you exact weights, and then I just weigh it out. Nice. And it's like, I didn't know how to make those calculations like you can quickly do in your head of 4 to 1.
Yeah, right. And one thing that I'll say here, I think that's something that's important for a lot of people to hear, is when you hear about this 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour, 140, these are top level athletes that are doing that. That doesn't mean that the standard like athlete that's working a full-time job and going out and riding on the weekends and doing some other workouts throughout the week should necessarily be aiming for that or needs that. You know, there's adaptations that come with that. And by adaptations, I mean like people have to get very intentional about meeting that goal if they need it, but not just more does not always mean better because it depends on the person.
Point. So here's the big question, because what do most weekend listeners do? What most people listen to this podcast, how do they feel? Stop the coffee shop. So when we think about a mid coffee shop or mid-ride stop, and I'm having my scone, my jam, and my cream, how do I start to think about factoring that into my nutrition plan then for the day? Like, is that deemed intra-session fueling, or is that like falling into a different category all on its own? And how should I adjust the rest of my fueling strategy based on this coffee shop? Because a lot of time, like a pro expression is like cafe legs when you come out of the coffee shop and you can't ride for the next 20 minutes because the scone is just stuck to you.
Exactly. Yes. Because a lot of times people are under fueling because they're thinking, oh, I'm just going to eat when I get to that cafe stop. So they under fuel and then they get to the cafe and they're in front of all this food and their brain just tunnel visions them to all the food and all the carbohydrates. And then they eat way more than they need in one sitting. And then they get back on the bike and their body has not had the time to digest that because it's been just this big bolus of calories and carbohydrate in one sitting. What's more effective is to slow drip your fuel throughout every single hour. So have multiple feeding opportunities throughout the hour so that you give your body time to digest those smaller boluses of carbohydrate.
You're like the fun police here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing for sure. The cafe legs, I love that. I haven't heard that before, but it's definitely a thing.
Because you're totally right. Because I'm putting myself back into before I was looking at this fueling strategies. If I'm riding 2 hours, I'm like, I'll make it to the calf. It's only 2 hours away. Then I get to the calf. But in reality, I've been hanging on for the last 20 minutes. And then I get there and try and convince everyone that there's no social taboo around having like 4 slices of carrot cake. And so I'll eat way too much. I'll get the huge sugar spike, the huge sugar crash, which I've watched that on the Super Sapiens app when I used to use it. And then it actually ruins your fueling for the entire rest of the session as well, because you're not sure when you should start eating again.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't really feel like starting to eat again because you're just so full of all that carbohydrate. So what I tell people is, you know, like for the person that's listening to this and is just wondering, okay, you guys just had this big conversation about converting calories and carbohydrates and all that kind of stuff. Like, where should I actually start? Start with where you're at now, which is if you're under fueling, it's probably like maybe 30, 40 grams of carbohydrates, or let's say, you know, 100 to 150 calories per hour, depending on how you're talking about it. Add 50 extra calories or add 25 grams of extra carbohydrate for your next effort and see how that feels. And then add another 25 grams of carbohydrate or another 100 calories, right? You can go up like 25 grams of carbohydrate or 100 calories extra from where you're at right now and see how you feel. And do that consistently for a week and then see how you feel. And you're probably going to feel a lot better. But also know that you probably don't need to be eating 400, 500 calories for the average person, or, you know, over 100 grams of carbohydrate for the average person.
What do you think the biggest mistake? You know, you're working with clients every day of the week. You're working with some of the best athletes in the world, on average, Joes and Janes, like, you know, Sarah when she came to you. Is there a common mistake that you see most people making?
A lot of people get caught up in all the noise and the trendy stuff and the stuff that sounds like sexy and cool, and that, you know, the people in the pro tour are doing, and they think they should be doing that. So that's why I talk about, you know, like you probably don't need 120 grams of carbohydrates for every hour of your exercise, that kind of thing for the average person. Or also the mistake that people make is they think that they need to go from here, which is their current baseline, to ideally where they want to be, which is here. And they do that in the matter of 2 days. And then they get discouraged because it feels horrible or it doesn't work or it's too complicated. So people need to start small. They need to start with the extra 25 grams of carbs or the extra 100 calories, or they need to start with having that recovery shake after their effort before they get in the shower, before they end up sitting in the computer for another 2 hours and getting distracted and then being like, oh shoot, I forgot my recovery. So people need to start small to make it sustainable and fit it into their life in a way that they're going to be able to do it consistently and notice a difference, rather than be like, oh, I have to be here, so I'm going to try to do that tomorrow. And then they give up and they just revert back to their old ways.
Yeah, I heard a great expression from someone on the podcast. And his thing was, he tries to get clients to move away from all or nothing and move towards all or something. It's like, I love that expression, because so many people think like, oh, I don't have a big enough vision. I don't have a big enough goal. And it's like, next year I'm going to break the world error record. And it's like, how about just like find your shoes? Like, let's start with something real small. How about just ride to the cafe and come back? And then when that's normalized, then we can ride a little further than the cafe. And it's not a glamorous message. Before we finish up, this is something that's, I guess, trending in popular culture at the moment. And I want to see if you had a hot take on it, because so many athletes do struggle with being overweight, and Ozempic is pitched as this magic pill. And we're not all pro athletes. We're not all talking about 80 to 120 grams. A lot of people's reality is it's a lot more. Their obesity or their extra 10, 20, 30 pounds, it's more of a lifestyle consideration than a performance consideration. Have you thought about Ozempic, if it has a use, or you think it's like totally to be avoided?
It has a use for some people, but for most of the time, there are so many other things that they can do before they get to Ozempic, right? So with Ozempic, it's like, the worst thing you can probably do is try to do Ozempic on your own and not consider all the other factors that come into play if you truly want to make this a lifestyle change, right? Because that's really what it comes down to, is like, is it even worth doing something that's going to last for a short period of time and then you're going to go back to your old ways? In my opinion, probably not. Like, we're here to do these things for a lifestyle change. And if we're looking for a quick fix that's going to give us results for the next 6 months, but we're not going to get into all the other nuances that make us a human and an individual, then we're missing a big mark here. So it's an interesting thing, but we are just more complex physiological, psychological beings than what an Ozempic injection is going to do for us most of the time. And there are so many other layers that come into play there if you are considering using Ozempic that you need to consider to make this a successful experience overall.
Yeah, I worry as well. Like, I guess it's a cost-benefit analysis. Like, if you're, chronically obese, you're pre-diabetic, you have limited mobility, maybe it makes sense to take Ozempic now and have it roll the dice on the long-term effects. But if you're someone who hasn't got those and you're just carrying some stubborn weight and you haven't, really rolled up your sleeve or sought professional advice from coaches, trainers, nutritionists, psychologists, like, what's the 10-year consequences of taking Ozempic? Like, none of us know. And it's like, maybe just take a back seat and see how that plays out.
Exactly. That's really smart. Yes, we don't really know. And it's becoming this thing that's just used in so many levels.
I spoke to a surgeon a while ago on the podcast. His name escapes me. And he had a really interesting point on, he thinks cosmetic surgery should be accompanied with mandatory counseling, otherwise it's pointless. So if you get your nose fixed and your jaw fixed, but you don't change the way you see yourself, you're never going to be happy. And I kind of think the same maybe applies to Ozempic. If you see yourself as a fat person, you see yourself as an obese person, you see yourself as someone who has lifestyle limitations, even if you look in the mirror and you're skinny, I don't think that's going to change how you see yourself.
Absolutely. That's why with nutrition too, I always get into, like, it's never just about the nutrition. It's never just about the macros and the calories and the grams of carbohydrates per hour. It's about, what's your relationship with food? What is your inner dialogue? What are the things that maybe your parents said to you when you were young that are shaping the way that you think about food now. All of that kind of stuff matters, because that is really what's consistent, right? Like, so much of our brain space is this inner dialogue, and a lot of it is negative. And if we don't address that when we're thinking about making these other changes, we're missing a massive piece of the puzzle here.
I think that was brilliant in one of your first answers where you talked about Haribo, that it's like you differentiated it immediately from eating Haribo on the bike when we need the fuel versus eating Haribo on the couch watching Netflix. Because implicit in that, it's a disarming of the morality that goes around food, where we start to tag foods as good and bad. That's just a really bad place to be.
Exactly. Yeah. There can be a time and a place for all that kind of stuff. You just have to know what that time and place is, and be intentional about it.
Yuri, you're a true expert in your craft. I know you work with a small number of clients one-on-one. If you do have any slots available and someone wants to work with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to probably get a hold of me is just on my Instagram, which is Yuri_Carlson, and shoot me a DM and tell me that you've heard me on the podcast. And I do discovery calls with people. We don't take just anyone and everyone for the program. I want to get on a call with you and make sure that I'm confident we can help you, and that what we offer is what you're looking for. So that's where I start with anyone, no matter who they are. And then we get into it from there.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Yuri, no paid relationship whatsoever, but Sarah was a full paying client of Yuri, and said it was one of the most transformative experiences she's ever had in her life. So definitely wholeheartedly endorse Yuri's little pitch there.
Thank you.
Yuri, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please click up here. There's another video I know that you're absolutely going to love. And click over here and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our amazing upcoming guests.